Excel formatting scares people because it feels destructive. Today I'll show you why it usually isn't, by covering some formats that cause real confusion: percentages, decimals, and dates, and how to format them without breaking your data. Let's set sail. I've set up this demonstration to show you how you can type different fields and format them exactly the way you want. We will start with percentages. And percentages, if you remember from math class, are really just decimal numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and type 0.15. And then I'm going to select that cell again, and I'm going to come up here to the number formatting, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to come down to percentage. And I'm going to go ahead and click percentage, and you see it changed it to 15%. And if I look up here in the formula bar, it is showing 15%. But underneath, Excel is still storing that as 0.15. So I can show you, because you can choose number. And if I choose number, it's going to change it to 0.15, change it back to 0.15. So it's the same thing. It's just how it's showing it to you. And if you don't want to see the decimal places after the percentage, you can get rid of those as well. These two buttons will this one will give you more decimal places, and this one will get rid of them, and that's what we want to do now. So we're going to click that 2 times to get rid of the 2 decimal places, and now we have 15% showing in that cell, which is exactly what we want. And again, that's still 0.15 here. And if I bring this back, it's going to give me the 2 decimal places again, so I have to get rid of them again. So that's entering it as a decimal and then changing the type to percentage. In this next example, I'm going to show you a little shortcut that you can enter a percent without going through all those extra steps that we just did. So I'm just going to type 15 and the percent sign, and then you can see it stores it as 15%, and it even changed the number format to percentage because I put the percent in. In this next example, I'm going to show you something that you may run into. If you just type 15, no decimal point, and press enter, and then say, oh, I meant for that to be a percent, and you come up to the number formatting and you click the format and you come all the way down to percent, and you click it, it changes it to 1500%, because 15 is 1500 if you're talking about percentages. You would need to type 0.15 to get 15%. And again, the easiest way is probably just to type 15 and the percent sign, and you'll get exactly what you want. Our next example is a decimal number, and I'm going to show you how to format it. I'm going to enter 12.34567 and press enter. You see the cell stores 12.34567, and if I click in the cell and look at the formula bar, it shows 12.34567, just like you expect. If you don't want to see these 5 decimal places, if you want to shrink that down a little bit, you can. You click this decrease decimal button, just like we did in that first percent example. And as I do that, you see the value in the cell shrunk by 1 decimal place. It shows a rounded up value, but the value that Excel is storing is still 12.34567. And I can click it. I'm going to click it a couple more times, and now I just have 2 decimal places. It's rounded it to the nearest hundredth, but again, it still shows 12.34567. So you don't lose data. It's not destroying anything. It's just showing you fewer decimal places, because by clicking the decreased decimal, it shows fewer decimal places. If you want those decimal places back, you can click on increase decimal, and you see they will all come back. And now we have 12.34567 and 12.34567. It still has the same information. Nothing has changed. The only thing that changed is what you see in this cell. So I'm going to click back down to 12.35 again. So nothing is changing when I do this. The next example is another decimal number, and we're just going to type, and it looks like it fills the cell, and that it's rounded. But if you want to know exactly what's in it, again, you can look at the cell, you can look at the formula bar. If they're the same, that is the data that's there. We can still always shrink this down if we like, or expand it out so you see all of the decimal places if you like. The thing to remember is the value you see in the cell may not always be exactly what's Excel is storing, and you can always confirm what it's storing by looking at the formula bar. Next, I'm going to enter a date. So I enter 1/15/2026, and I press enter, and nothing is wrong with this. Nothing is wrong with anything we've done. You may not always want to see the date in the format 1/15/2026. It is storing it as 1/15/2026, but maybe you want to have the month spelled out. Excel will let you do that. So we're going to come up here to the format, the number format again. We're going to come down to, we're going to choose long date. And when we do that, Excel changes what you're seeing to match that format. And when you see the hashes like this, again, it just means there's too much information to fit in the width of the cell. So we're just going to expand this out a little bit further. And now you can see it has the day of the week, Thursday, January 15th, 2026. And at this point, I want to show you, those are not your only options for date. And Excel, this is quick selections that you can choose. At the bottom, you can choose more number formats, and it already has date selected. You can pick from several different options, and we are not going to look at all of them. If you don't want the day of the week, you could change it to just March 14th. That's the example, March 14th, spell out March, but it's going to show January 15th, 2026, because that is the date that is in the cell. Or maybe you want a leading zero on the month, and you see 01/15/26, 2-digit year. Again, it's still storing it as in the formula bar as January 15th, 2026. One thing that you'll probably want to know, just because you will likely run into it at some point, is that Excel stores dates as numbers. And so if we type 45678, Excel accepted that as a number. It thinks it's a number. Sometimes you may be looking at a column and it's supposed to be a date, but you see this number, 45,678, or some other number. And you can change that to see the actual date, again, by going up to the number format. And we're just going to come to short date and choose that. And now you see that number corresponds to January 21st, 2025. And that's just the way Excel has stored January 21st, 2025. It stores it as the number 45678. You don't need to know that it's 45,678. Just know that if you see something that you think is supposed to be a date, but it's a number, it might be just not showing you the right format. So go up to the number formatting and choose short date or a different date format if that's what you like. But it will show you the actual date and change it to the actual date. In the next example, I want to show you a date that's been stored as text. And if you remember from the previous video, you can use an apostrophe and type whatever you like. And we're going to type something that looks like a date, 1/15/26, press enter. And Excel gives us our little alert that says, this looks like a date with only 2 digits for the year. And it calls it a date string, which means it's telling you that it's text and not an actual date. So you can't change this to a date. You can't give it a format of a long date. I'll just show you that. If I try to do long date, it's still going to leave it as 1/15/26. Where Excel has stored it, it's stored just as text, not as a date format. So no matter what we do to this, it will always stay 1/15/26. And this is just something else you should be aware of, because you may run into cells formatted as text, but they look like a date. And the best way to fix that is to just re-enter the date. I'm just going to type exactly like that. And because I picked the long date when I was up here a moment ago, that's what it's showing me. But I can change it to the date with the slashes if that's what I want to see. Same thing with numbers. I'm going to use the apostrophe to quickly make this text. And it's going to tell me the same thing. This looks like a number stored as text. And that means if I try to expand decimal places or reduce them, it will not change the appearance of this. And this is stored as a text. And you know that in this case because there's an apostrophe there. I come down here and just type 1000 without that apostrophe. It's now stored it as a number, and I can do all the fun things I can do with numbers, expand it out or shrink it or bring back the decimal places, and it behaves just like a number like you would expect. Next, we have fractions. So if I enter 3/5, it's going to say, oh, that's a date. And we kind of covered this in the last video as well, but I actually want this to be a fraction. And in the last video, we just turned it into text, but you can also turn it into a fraction. So the problem we have is Excel converted this to a date. So it converted it to the date, the number for March 5th, 2026. So if I convert this to a fraction right now, it's going to change it to 46,086. So that's not what we want. What I'm going to do is back this out, and I'm going to come back up here, and I'm going to change this to fraction. So now this cell is a fraction, and I'm going to type 3/5. And it stores it as 3/5 because I told it this is a fraction. And in this formula bar, you see it's stored as 0.6, which is the equivalent of 3/5 in decimal form. So it stores it in decimal form, but it's showing you 3/5. In our last example, and let me just expand this column out just a little bit. Okay. In our last example, we are going to enter the fraction 15/100ths. If I just type 15/100 in this cell, it won't identify it as a date because nothing about that to Excel makes sense as being a date. So it'll store it as text, but we don't want that. We want to store it as an actual number. And we want to type it in as the fraction 15/100ths. So to do that, we have to do a little bit extra. We come up to the number format, and we're going to go back into the more number formats, which is where we were when we changed the dates. We are going to click on fraction. And there are a lot of options here, but we are going to pick up to 3 digits. If we don't choose this, if we just chose fraction in the dropdown, it would default to 1-digit fractions. So we don't want that. We want to consider 3 digits for the fraction. And so I selected that. I clicked OK. And then I'm going to type 15/100ths. Now watch what it does. Changed it to 3/20ths, and 15/100ths is 0.15 if you remember from math, but it changes it to 3/20ths because if you simplify 15/100ths, divide both of these by 5, you get 3/20ths. So it does the simplification for you, and it's still stored as a number behind the scenes in the formula bar. So it's showing you 3/20ths, even though we entered 15/100ths and storing it as 0.15. So now you have a taste of how Excel formats numbers and how you can control what you see in the cell, even though, again, back up to 15%, it's showing you 15%, even though we typed 0.15, and it's actually storing 0.15 behind the scenes. It's being very helpful here in showing us 0.15. 12.35 is probably a better example. It's showing you the full number we typed in, even though we don't only see 12.35. So I want to tell you that it's okay to open up a blank workbook, type in some numbers, and then try the different formats. You can try straight from this dropdown, or you can go to more number formats and click on some of these different options, change decimal places, or change how it looks, and you can add a comma separator if you like. There's plenty of options here. You won't break anything if you go into a blank workbook and just play with the formatting. And if you get completely turned around and everything looks crazy, there's always an escape hatch. I've selected all of these cells that I just spent time formatting, and I come up here and I click General, and it changes them all back to what Excel is storing behind the scenes. So you can't really break anything. You can always get back to where you started just by changing back to general format. So now that you understand that Excel separates formatting from the data it's actually storing, it gets a lot less scary. So until next time, I wish you smooth sailing.